So yes, we are doing the Walking Dead Telltale character tier list review. Yes. Obviously, God tier is the highest echelon. It's for the characters that I think are incredible and with little if no flaws in either their character development or just how I biasedly feel about them. Again, this is of course my opinion, so you may disagree with some of the choices that I make, but this is how I would rate these characters. So for the God tier, we could go across, right? We could go across and just pick in line, but I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take Lee Everett, and I'm going to take... Is she not in this list? Oh, there she is. Okay. So first of all, I think it's not surprising Lee Everett and Clementine are God tier characters. I feel like that's a pretty hard argument. I feel like it's pretty hard to dispute that. Lee Everett's character is just amazing. He's so chaotic good that it hurts. He's just such a sweetheart. Obviously getting to play him as a guardian character to Clementine suits him really well, and it makes you care about him more because your choices aren't only affecting yourself, but they're affecting Clementine, which is why I also think that season 4 is my favorite season, and then season 1 is my second favorite season. And I think that's because you get to play this guardian role that has to not only be accountable for your actions, but your actions influence other characters, and especially AJ and Clementine in those respective roles. So I feel like Clementine and Lee mirror each other, especially in their respective seasons. Clementine has one blemish in my opinion, and that's in season 3 when she accidentally shoots the guy in Prescott and then asks you to lie about it. But I don't think that's a character decision. I think that's the developers trying to see how much people, or how far, what the extremities are of people and their relationship to Clementine, and how far they would go to keep her on their good side or stick up for her even if she's making a bad choice. And then also in season 3, when you're given the choice to take the drugs and give them to AJ or leave them, the doctor said that the drugs weren't going to do anything for AJ, and I'm pretty sure if you didn't take the drugs, it wouldn't just kill AJ, because then there's no season 4. Season 4 basically relies on AJ being alive, so I don't think that you could actually kill AJ by not giving him the drugs there. So in that instance, I don't think that we should have taken the drugs when we did. I regret that choice, because there would have been no reason for David and Richmond to throw us out if we hadn't taken the drugs, and I don't think it would have changed the result with AJ either. So ultimately, season 3 is her weakest season, but I don't think that makes her less of a god tier character. I still think Lee and Clementine are amazing, perfect characters, so well developed, especially Clementine, because you do get to see her from season 1 to 4. It's really weird that they take it from she's not playable in season 1, and then in season 2 she's playable, and then season 3 you don't play as Clementine again, and she feels so far removed from the actual story that's going on with Javier and Kate and David in season 3 that it almost seemed like she didn't need to be a part of that season. But then season 4 you're playing her again, and then she's obviously a great character there, and there's the scare with her getting bit and everything. So Really cool full circle character development for her in season 4. I feel like it's very hard to argue against them being god tier. There he is. Larry. King asshole himself. Larry is absolutely a dumpster tier character. And dumpster tier for me is not only going to be, was their arc terrible? Were they objectively just not fleshed out enough? Were they not a good character? Dumpster tier is also going to be my biased opinion of who was the biggest asshole. As low as the rung can go for character tiers, Larry has to be on the bottom one every single time. He's just such an unrelenting asshole for no reason. For no reason. Admittedly racist. He always has a negative outlook. He always has an opinion that wants to clash with yours and someone else's. That being said, he's just a clear, hard and fast asshole. Kenny is also dumpster tier, in my opinion. Now, I feel like this is probably going to be one of the most controversial choices I make. If you're someone who played this game and you stuck with Kenny and you chose to save Kenny over Jane and you were with him for the first 2 seasons and you loved him, but does that make him a good character? Which guy, Larry? I haven't seen other people's tier list, but I bet that Kenny is near top of their list for others based on how the game made him a part of the story. No, I think like Larry's done well in a way that it makes you hate him, right? He's effectively an asshole, but I don't think that makes him a good character, because the only purpose that he serves in the story is to be an asshole. Not through him do we find out other things and then there's a redeeming quality about how shitty he is. He's just such an asshole. If his being an asshole serviced something else in the story, it would be completely fine. I'll have more to say about that when we get to Lily's character for sure. But Kenny, I feel like, is a dumpster tier character for a similar reason, but it's also stretched differently. And of course, you're right, it does have to do with my playthrough, right? Obviously, if I played this completely differently and I had, made different choices with a bunch of different characters, maybe I would feel differently about half of these characters, right? But with Kenny, I feel like he's a dumpster tier character because every single chance that he had to be a good guy, he chose the opposite path, and he was so hypocritical about it. He just has all of the worst qualities of human being underneath a martyr and hero complex that is so diluted for every single scene that you see him in. And he's always shouting. Every single argument that he makes, he needs it to be a shouting match against someone, and he's swearing at them, or he's beating up someone who's innocent and helpless when it's not going to help the situation. When we first meet Larry wants to murder Kenny's kid, Duck, because it looks like Duck may have been bitten, right? Speculating that he may have been bitten, but not for sure. And then Kenny's like, no, please, no, don't murder him. He's not bitten. But then when Larry is unconscious for maybe 2 seconds and he's probably breathing, Kenny drops a brick on his head. No hesitation, right? Completely hypocritical. It was that one choice in that first season that made me completely hate Kenny, because I knew at that point that he would throw anyone else under the bus. He would do anything it took to keep himself and Duck and Katja safe, his wife. But in order to do that, he would step on anyone's necks to do it. And even when Lee was in trouble, there were at least 2 times in season 1 where Lee is in trouble and Kenny's right there and can help him, and he chooses not to. He steps back. And then when Lee confronts him about it, Kenny's like, oh, you had it under control. And then later on in the season, when we don't help Kenny out in a situation, he's like, I've had your back this whole time. He's so hypocritical. I just can't stand his character. It makes no sense to me. I completely understand that everyone can have their opinion on any character, right? And obviously there were things that people must have liked about Kenny enough to want to keep him around for 2 seasons, and they would follow him in the second season because we were in the very slight, like tiny minority of people who kept Jane instead of Kenny at the end. I think it was 10% of players picked Jane and 90% of people picked Kenny at the end, which is insane to me. But obviously, I think people just played the game thinking that Kenny would be able to make the hard choices for them, but I can't stand Kenny's choices. Yeah, Kenny got no consistent values or integrity. That's what I'm saying. It's so frustrating having to deal with Kenny, and then every single choice that he makes is awful. And then when he makes an awful choice, the game makes you go talk to him after in the second season, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was just thinking of Katja. I was just thinking of Duck. I was so sad and despondent." And then 2 seconds later, he's going and he's beating up Arvo, who is an asshole, but he's tied up. Oh. Based on the way that I played and the way that I interpreted Kenny's choices, Kenny just turned out to be such an asshole. And then at the end of the second season, when it became about whether or not you're going to be with Jane or Kenny, that was the clearest choice for me. There was never a back and forth moment of, oh, I wonder who we should keep safe. Should we keep Kenny safe? No, it was always Jane. That being said, I also have some choice words about Jane, but yeah, that's why I wouldn't put Kenny here, because of how effective he is at drawing your emotions and making you frustrated and doing that. In my opinion, based on my playthrough, based on my experiences with Kenny, he doesn't service anything except to be the one constant thing in both seasons at the start that screws everything up for the entire group, and then you have to deal with it. And for some reason, everyone thinks that he's fine, even though he's the biggest wild card, and it's just insane. It's just insane. Like, everyone acts like, oh, have you seen what Kenny's doing? I don't know if we can trust him. And that's the way that I feel the entire season, and then the characters finally catch up with that. It's ridiculous. But yeah, so those are my clear god tiers, my clear dumpsters. Everyone else is going to be a little bit more of a question mark here, but let's just start picking them off. So let's see. Mark. So Mark, like, some of these characters are going to be so insignificant, but not awful. And I feel like that's where C is going to go, right? I think Mark is probably a C. I think his character was fine. He was literally just the NPC who you're with, and then he gets shot, and then they eat him. But he's out of commission fairly early, and then you just remember him as the guy who got his legs cut off, and then the dairy farmers ate his legs, right? So not really a huge role, but he wasn't a bad guy either. Oh, Ben. Ben, for me, is either D or dumpster tier. I feel like Ben... So let's go over the choices. So Ben, when he shows up at our camp, when we rescue him from the bandits or whoever it was, he shows up, and the first thing he does to contribute to our group is start stealing from us to give to the marauders or the raiders. He steals our medicine and all of our stuff from the motor inn, and then he lies about it and gets Carly killed because of Lily's rage in asking who stole the supplies. Then later on, he doesn't help Clem. He actively runs in scenarios where he could have helped Clem. And then he is going to get killed in the bell tower, but we decided to save him because we thought, okay, there's an asset there, you know, like always having a body there is better than losing people if you don't need to for no reason. Plus, I figured I would be able to save him, so it would be a waste if I just let him die. But then I think it was maybe 5 minutes later, he falls from the stairwell on the fire escape, and he gets killed, and he dies because he lands on the bar or whatever, and then Kenny goes down with me to try to help him out, but he's just stabbed there, he's impaled, and then I think Kenny shoots him in the head, and he dies. So Ben never contributes anything to the group. He's just there to be an asshole, and I don't think he services anything in the group either. I think he's just there to try to make you feel bad about him the entire time, and then he dies either way, right? Because if I had let him die in the bell tower, then he would have been dead anyway. So us saving him in the bell tower only prolonged his life for 5 minutes. Yeah, what the hell was that interaction with Ben and Kenny at the end there? Kenny acting like he's trying to be a hero, but was an ass the entire time and didn't even save him? Yeah, exactly. Their squabbles were so stupid because they're both in the same boat of not helping any situation and just being complete assholes about everything. And then the other character that I need to put in dumpster tier, because it's just a facsimile, is Sarah. Sarah is a piss character. She's another character who I saw just the same way as Ben, where I really thought that she was just going to be, maybe she's sheltered, maybe she's innocent, and so we need to kind of break her out of that and get those walls down, and then she'll become a normal human being. And I was wrong for that, because it's the exact same thing where she's just a plant who you're supposed to feel bad for the entire time, and then when you decide to save her in that RV and Jane's yelling at you, no, just leave her, there's no point in trying to save her, she can't be reckoned with, like she won't get up. And then we do save her, and I'm like, oh look, see Jane, you shouldn't say that because we can save people, it's not a waste. Just for 5 minutes later, again, her dying. Because in that choice where Jane's hanging off the edge of the thing and Luke has her, if you choose to either save Jane or go save Sarah, Sarah dies either way. So it's really just these moments of like, okay, can we get these people to make you feel bad for them just enough that you'll want to save them? But then it doesn't matter because they die either way. They die presently either way. So these two characters are just plants that they want you to feel bad for, but they're just slowing everyone down, and they're just frustrating to deal with. But I didn't see that with Sarah until she had died, but while she was alive, I was like, no, you know what? She's going to become like us. Like she'll be awesome, and she'll be a fighter if we can teach her that. Carlos is wrong, her dad's wrong, and then she'll be better, but she was never better. I should have just listened to Jane, right? So that was frustrating. Then we've got this family of farmers, of dairy farmers. I think I'll put them all... Where did that guy go? Oh. I think I'll put all of them in C, because I feel like they held up the secret of them eating people for a long enough time that it was pretty intriguing in that first season. This guy in particular, he was funny because he wanted us to eat him. When we were going to kill him, he was like, make sure you don't taint the meat though. And it's like, I'm not trying to eat you, man. Like, no, like, what are you talking about? I don't want to eat you. Just relax. And then this guy was prodding us too, but then we left him to get eaten at the end instead of killing him in front of Clementine, because we killed this guy right in front of Clementine, and then she shrieked and I felt bad. Assumes everyone's like him. When you eat me, make sure. Exactly. Yeah. He was like, okay, well, this is what you're going to want to do when you eat me. When you do eventually eat me. It's like, I'm not trying to eat you, dude. Relax. And then she was the same, where she's like creepy den mother who is cooking human beings, and they have like the whole butcher shop in the back of the barn. So I thought they were cool. I thought these were pretty good antagonists because they also generally seem like nice people, but I don't know if I want to put them in B because they are pretty forgettable. So I think I'll reserve them for C. Yeah, they were pretty sneaky about it because you could tell that there was something fishy going on, but it wasn't like, okay, these people are definitely evil, you know? Like I thought maybe the bandit stuff had to do with why they were bad, but I feel like I think the bandit people were the people that had escaped from them or something like that. So like this woman is one of the people that escaped from them, and she's just freaking out about her kid because they took her kid and probably ate him or ate her, and then she was just a freak. So I'll put, if I'm putting her here, I'll say she's a D, just because she helped expose them, but then she gets shot immediately. I hesitate to say D, but Omid really didn't do anything either. Omid was like comic relief for 2 seconds, and then he gets his leg hurt, and then he gets shot in the bathroom by the random chick. So I think D. Krista's probably... I think Krista's a better character than Omid, but she's also not anything special. Probably C for her, because we also don't know what happens to her. She just disappears. At the start of season 2, she just disappears. We don't know where she ended up. She's just gone. Yeah, so yeah, like at the start of season 2, we go in the bathroom, and then this woman comes in, shoots Omid, Krista shoots her, and Krista's pregnant, but we get split up when these people attack us, and then we never see Krista again. And Krista's had her baby at that point as well, but we don't even know what happened to the baby. Like, she doesn't have the baby, but we don't know where the baby is, and then we don't know where Krista is. So I think Krista was a decent character, but we don't even know what happens to her. So C. C for Krista. I think our first B is going to be Chuck here. I thought Chuck's character was kind of interesting. We find him on that train. He's just a homeless man living on that train that we go on. And then he seems like he's going to be an asshole because he prods us about Clem, but then ultimately he gets Lee to go and cut Clem's hair and teach her how to shoot a gun. And then he ends up dying to save Clementine in the street at the start of season 1, episode 4. So Chuck serves his purpose by helping incentivize Clementine growing up and learning how to use a gun, and then he self-sacrifices and not kills himself, but he fights off the herd and lets Clementine and us escape, and then we find him later in the sewer and he's dead, but he serves his purpose well, and he's a good character. I say Chuck is a B. I think Molly is also a B. Because her character is just super cool. I like how you just find him dead, no story. Yeah, totally, yeah. Yeah, it's cool because you're like, okay, well, maybe he got away, right? Because usually, like sometimes the characters will just disappear like Krista, and you don't know what happened to them, but then you find him in the sewer, and his guts are all hanging out and everything. It's cool. Yeah, because you get closure on that, but I like Molly's character because she just comes out of nowhere. She's scaling buildings, and she's doing parkour, and she's a ninja, and she has her ice axe, which is super cool. And she's a survivor of, what is the place called? Does it start with a W? Yeah, Crawford. That's what it is. Yeah, exactly. Crawford. Yeah. So she's a survivor of Crawford, and she manages to escape somehow. We don't even know. And it's supposed to be hidden. It's supposed to be a secret, I guess. that she's from Crawford, but it's so obvious. Why would she be in that city if she wasn't? But it's cool that she's on her own, and she has her own vendettas and backstory with the doctor that's in Crawford, and her having a baby and everything was interesting. But then she leaves because she's just a lone wolf or whatever. But I thought her character was a cool addition. She seemed like she had her head on her shoulders and she knew what she was doing, so she was cool. This guy, just a straight up asshole, right? Not deplorable, but definitely an asshole. Didn't really help us with anything. He kind of just said, oh yeah, we know the sewers really well. We know how to infiltrate Crawford. You go through the sewer line network and then you're up in there and then there you go. But then at the end he's like, are you sure you should be with Clem? Are you sure that we shouldn't take her? How can you keep her safe? It's like, shut up, asshole. So he's D. This chick I'm not even gonna rate because she's also there for 2 seconds and then she dies. This guy I liked a lot. This guy's only there for 5 minutes, right? But the reason why I like this guy's character is because he's the first really intimidating antagonist in the first season, at least. And I like that he's as random as just the guy that owned the car that Kenny and all of them looted. There was that car earlier in the first season where it was full of supplies, it was full of clothes, and Clementine's like, no, we shouldn't steal from that. It's not ours. And so of course I was like, okay, yeah, we're not stealing from that. You and me aren't stealing from that because she didn't want to, but Kenny and everyone else did. And then we find out that was this guy's car, and he's been following us ever since. And his wife died, and he has her head in his bag. It's this talking animate zombie head in his bag, and he ends up finding Clementine. He ends up talking to us on the radio, the walkie-talkie. And then I like that it's in the last episode of season 1, and he brings up all of our choices again and tries to guilt trip us with it, kind of like the dude in Until Dawn sort of thing, that intermediary person, because it gives you the refreshers on what you did. And if it was a choice that you didn't necessarily want to make or like making, it puts that in your face again, and that's really fun. Like how he's like, you killed that guy at the dairy farm right in front of Clementine, and that's one choice in season 1 that I really regretted. So I was like, oh, you asshole, of course you would bring that up. But yeah, so that was cool, and it's a cool hostage situation. You have to deal with him and get Clementine back in a rescue, so I think his character is pretty cool. Bonnie, oh boy, let's put her down there. Bonnie is absolute dumpster tier, in my opinion. Bonnie is just garbage dumpster tier, and the reason why, not even counting 400 Days, right? We see her first in 400 Days, that season 1 DLC, and everyone in that DLC is fine, but they're not great at all, which is why I'm not going to be rating Vincent here, or Wyatt, wherever he is. I'm not going to be rating them. I'm just rating the main season people. But holy hell, Bonnie is so awful. She leads Carver and that group to us, just thinking, I guess, oh, I don't know, I thought he wouldn't hurt you guys, even though she knows exactly who the hell he is. She knows how he runs that place at House. Is she stupid? She must be stupid. And then later on, when we're at House, when Carver comes and takes all of us, she's like, oh, I want you to be able to forgive me. And of course I don't, because I have nothing to rely on for her that I can trust her on. So I don't trust her, and then she feels bad. She's like, oh, she's just pouting the whole time. And then when we leave House and we kill Carver, when we get to the second season, she does absolutely nothing except for complain about stuff and ask us to do things for her. And then when it comes to Luke dying in the ice, she kills Luke because we decided to stand back and just shoot the walkers. And he says, don't come near me, the ice will break. And meanwhile, Bonnie's just marching on over there and then gets him killed because she falls through the ice too. And then he does. And then later on, she blames us. Bonnie blames us. She's like, why didn't you do anything to try to save him? It's like, are you joking? Oh, and then she ends up just leaving with Arvo and Mike, I think his name is, or maybe just her and Mike, but oh, Bonnie is just so back and forth, but she's always untrustworthy. And then the whole time she's just pouting because nobody trusts her. And it's like, what do you think? Why would anyone trust you? Oh, yeah, she's awful. She's so bad. Okay. Now, AJ. I feel like AJ is a tough one. I didn't particularly like AJ, right? Like, I feel like AJ was a huge brat for a lot of the 4th season. Huge brat. But I think his character is effective in wanting you to make choices that won't turn him into an asshole like Kenny, right? I feel like AJ's arc is pretty interesting because it's basically shaped by the way that you treat him, by the way that you let others treat him, and then ultimately at the end of the game, in the last episode, you really decide that by saying if he's ready to make his own choices or not. And then in that last episode, I actually really agree with the choices that he did make, at least in our playthrough, where he shot 10 to rescue Violet, and I really do wish that he had taken the shot on Lily as well. You know, that's not a choice that I made, and I wish that he did, meaning that I do think that he was ready to make those choices himself. He's a kid and he's suggestible and impressionable, and it's basically how well you manage to treat him. Like, of course, did I want him to kill Marlon? Absolutely not. I was ready to even slightly forgive Marlon, but it's interesting at the very least that he kills Marlon, because then his character is interesting because he's like a little murderer in the making, right? So I think AJ is a really good character. It's sort of like he's Clementine if he was even more intrepid and more emotional, because I feel like Lee had a better handle on Clementine, but Clementine was also just wholly good, right? Like she didn't have an evil bone in her body. Meanwhile, with AJ, you really have to be careful and tread on thin ice, because otherwise he will turn into a cold-blooded killer, which is really, it's interesting in terms of having to play as a guardian figure. So I didn't particularly like his character, but what he does in the story to make you want to shape his character, I think is interesting. So AJ is an A. Luke. I think Luke's a B. I think Luke is B because Luke is so good-hearted the entire time, right? Luke always has the optimistic attitude, and he always is charming and just fun, but every single plan that he has backfires or doesn't execute properly. He either gets caught or it just doesn't work flat out, right? Like he didn't help save us when Carver came, and then he ends up showing up at Howe's and he says, "Oh, I've got this great plan. Just get the walkie-talkies and we'll do this. It'll be great." And then he's caught and they beat him up, right? And then he dies in the stupidest way too. At least Luke got some ass in these troubled times. Yeah, exactly. That's his peak moment for sure. But then he dies in the stupidest way as well because of Bonnie, right? Like he gets killed off in such a stupid way. where it definitely could have been avoided. In real life, definitely could have been avoided. I feel like if more of his plans actually were executed well, and he wasn't just there to be, charming and nice to talk to among like a bunch of other people who aren't trustworthy, he would have been an A for me, but he's a B for sure. Rebecca, D. There's not a lot to say about Rebecca other than she just loved to complain and she was pregnant, so we just had to deal with that. There's really nothing else to say there. Nick's character, I think is also a B. I actually found Nick's character to be like the foil to Ben and Sarah, where Nick at least looked like he was going to be redeemable. Like Nick seemed like the character that, like, if you just put up with him, then he would grow up and be able to take responsibility as well, similar to Ben and Sarah. And he was more interesting, at least, than Ben and Sarah, even if basically the exact same thing happens to him. Does Walter shoot him? I forget. But he gets killed somehow at the end. Or no, I think he's a walker. I don't know. I forget how he dies, but I feel like his arc is interesting. He kills one of he kills this dude, right? Who I'm not even gonna rate because he lasts for like 2 seconds. But he kills that guy, and I hate him for that. But then it puts him into a position where he has to apologize to Walter, and I loved that. He was actually receiving consequences for his actions, and it wasn't just he's gonna be a dumbass and then you're gonna have to deal with that, So I was at least interested in where this guy's story was going, even if it basically mirrors these two people. So that's all well and good. Carlos, I think, was C as well. Carlos at the start seems like he's going to be really nice and help you out, but then you find out that he's just sheltering Sarah. And that's really frustrating because obviously she can't live like that, and it obviously ends up getting her killed. And then he just becomes the punching bag. Carlos just becomes the guy who Carver beats the piss out of, and then he ends up dying in that walker herd when you guys are escaping. I think is when he dies. Yeah, because Sarah freaks out. He's nothing special as it continues on. Alvin, same as Rebecca. These people are the exact same. He's selfish and wants to get more food for her without telling people, which I think is an interesting choice, but we told him that we should share the food equally, or at least take a vote. I don't remember this guy. I don't remember him. Sarita, also D. She was just there to be Kenny's new love interest, I guess. She wasn't anything incredible, and then she gets her arm cut off by us because she gets bit on the hand. And then we have to kill her in front of Kenny. Walter, I loved Walter. Walter was an amazing character. In like the half an hour that you spend with Walter, he's funny, he's nice, he's conflicted because Nick shot the guy that was his friend on the bridge, and then he has to deal with that, and he ends up forgiving Nick, right? He's so complex in that half an hour that we see him. We see like an entire arc in that one character, and then he gets killed either way, right? Just like the game loves to do, he gets killed either way. So I was so frustrated by that, but I think he was a good character, even if he was only there for a short amount of time. Walter is sickening, Walter is pissening. Yes. Yeah, Walter was awesome. And he was making delicious beans and peaches. Mike's fine. I don't know. Mike's C. He was fine, right? Again, he was just NPC man, Is this Jane? My God, they butchered Jane. They butchered Jane. I cannot believe, she wasn't like amazing looking in season 2. Don't get me wrong. But in season 4, with their flashbacks, she's gained like 100 pounds and just looks so much different. I have problems with Jane. I really do. Here's my problem with Jane. If I was gonna say that she was an A, I love the fact that she's so smart about the walkers all through season 2. She knows how to navigate all that stuff. She's basically a mother/sister figure for Clementine, which is really important for Clementine. And so much of Jane's knowledge gets passed on to Clementine, including the stun the knee and then hit them in the head when they're down. She keeps that through all of season 4 as well. And she's just ultimately like a complex character herself, because she's so cold at that point that she's completely unempathetic except for with Clementine. And then any other character who's in the slightest bit of danger, she's like, no, leave him, like we don't have time, it's not important, we just gotta go. And so I don't think that's a bad thing. Like I feel like there's a lot of people that should be like that in the apocalypse, and it's probably smart for the most part, especially in the case of Sarah, who we shouldn't have saved because it didn't matter, right? So that's good. But then also you need the Clementine levity of the situation and warmth to balance that out, but that was why their pairing was so good. So I would normally say that she's God tier, I think. And plus, she even helps us end Kenny. She helps us get rid of Kenny. So she's amazing, right? Just for that alone, she should be God tier. The only reason why she's one tier lower, in my opinion, going to an A, is because we find out that she got pregnant from hooking up with Luke, and then she kills herself. She offs herself when she finds out that she's pregnant, which is so frustrating, because is there no other option other than just killing yourself in the apocalypse? Is there, like, I said this when we were playing, but not to be crude, but is there not a way to force miscarry so that you don't have to deal with the baby if that's not what you want? It's ridiculous that she decides the only option for her is to kill herself, especially when it means leaving Clementine alone, who, you know, you fought for the entire second season. It's just so pathetic. It's such a blemish on her character, and it makes no sense. It's the last thing you would expect her character to do. Like, her character would have been like, oh yeah, like I dealt with it. Don't worry. I dealt with it. I'm not having a baby. I dealt with that. But not kill herself. It's so pathetic. It's such a stupid way out of that. And I feel like the developers were probably just like, okay, we need a way to write off her character, so let's have her kill herself, which is so stupid. I think that's so stupid, and if it wasn't for that, she'd be God tier, but because of that, she's A. Because I still do really think her character was great in season 2, but damn it, that conclusion for her just soils it so badly. This dude's D. He's just there to be resident asshole who is the security guard. Carver, I think Carver's an A. I do think Carver's an A. Carver's a good antagonist because he's just the purely violent guy, you know? He's the first guy in the series who's the antagonist who just means to do harm, and he manipulates people, and I think he does a good job of it. When he comes to the house and he's threatening Clementine and he's being super sus, and then you see him later on and, you know, he's beating up all your friends and he's just being super violent. It's effective. It does the job of having the one guy who is an asshole that you have to try to figure out how to stop. And then his death is interesting too, even though you really only have to deal with him for one episode and then he dies, right? And then you guys usurp him and kill him, right? So he doesn't last for very long, but I feel like what he accomplishes within your group during that time is effective. So I think he's a good villain. I think A. I forget this guy's name. I just know he's Kumail Nanjiani. He's a C. This guy's like funny, right? He's there for comedic relief again, and then he dies. He's the demonstration of Carver's evil, right? But nothing like crazy or amazing. Arvo upset me so much because we did everything in our power, right? As Clementine, as the player, we did everything in our ability to make sure that Arvo was safe and that Arvo was understood. We didn't steal from the medicine from his bag. We told Jane not to shoot him. We gave him the benefit of the doubt when he was in that group of people because I thought he was being, manipulated by them, and I thought they were making him look like the sweet little boy and using him against his will. And he did have a sister who was sick, and that's what the medicine he had was for. But even after all of that, Kenny beats the piss out of him all the way over through the snow, through the lake. And then he's just going to leave with Mike and Bonnie. And then he shoots Clementine. We even gave the gun to Mike. We handed the gun to Mike. We weren't being threatening at all. We weren't saying, oh, hey, no, you have to stay, blah, blah, blah. We gave the gun to Mike, and it dropped on the ground, and then Arvo shoots us in the shoulder. And then they leave. It's like, what did I do to deserve that? Arvo, asshole. Like, the whole time I was just trying to make it so he was as comfortable as possible. I wanted to be nice to Arvo because I thought he was just being hounded on by the group that he was with, and then obviously Kenny's treating him like piss, right? And for no reason. Kenny wasn't beating him up for any reason other than just to be an asshole to him. So that was so frustrating, but then he turns into an asshole against me for no reason. Who is this? I don't remember him either. Jesus was a good character. I don't know whether... Like, I don't think that he was impactful enough to be an A. Like, I thought Jesus was a good character, but he was really only there twice. That guy is in the first group that finds Clem after she's separated from Krista. He gets bit and you have to pick to save him or Nick. What? Oh, you're right. Yeah. Yeah, this is Pete. Oh, I didn't recognize him at all. Okay, well, Pete, I remember well. Pete, I really didn't like. Pete just seemed like he wanted to talk shit about all the other characters. Like, he was just on Nick's ass the entire time, which frustrated me so much. He was just, yeah, Pete doesn't know, or he was like, Nick doesn't know how to use a gun. So stupid, right? It's like, I don't know you or him. Relax. I don't know you. Don't talk shit about that guy behind his back. What the hell? So this guy pissed me off. So D. Okay, so Doug was also D tier. He wasn't exactly dumpster, but he was D tier. Like, I'll say he's D and not dumpster because maybe if you save him, he ends up doing something of benefit later on. But because of where he died in our playthrough and how he's just the guy who doesn't know what to do outside the gate, he's a D. Carly, I loved Carly. Carly's an awesome character. I love Carly because she's just stoic the whole time. And there's like a chance for a romance between Lee and her, which is like the first romance you get in the game. But she's so chill. She's just, yeah, let's get this done. Yeah, let's go to this place. Let's get this done. And she's a great shot too. So I felt like she was going to be a great asset to us. And then she ends up getting killed by Lily, which is so brutal. But she was one of the only people in that first group that was just a good rock. So it sucks that she died, but I feel like either person you save in that situation, Carly or Doug, the person you save just ends up getting killed by Lily outside the RV. no matter who you keep alive, it doesn't matter, they die anyway. But I did think that her character was good for someone in the first season that wasn't, totally crazy or pathetic. I think I have to say James is an A as well. And the reason why I think James is an A is because his opinion on the walkers being somewhat people inside still, or somewhat cognitive still, is something I don't believe. I don't think that those, like, and I don't know, right? Like, it's impossible to know what the lore is for that unless, Robert Kirkman has stated what the zombies are actually, if they are sentient or not. But James's influence on me was actually effective. It made me start to think like, okay, maybe I should be more empathetic. Maybe I shouldn't be killing the walkers, At least if for no other reason, on a fundamental level, it made me think, if I start killing people or start killing walkers, something bad's gonna happen to me. Like, even if it wasn't like, oh, the walkers are actually people, so don't kill them. Even if it wasn't to that extent, I still felt like season 4 is really trying to teach me that it's bad karma. Exactly. Like, it was trying to teach me, don't let AJ kill, because something really bad is going to happen if you do that. So even though I don't believe this dude and how he perceives the walkers, it really affected my choices, especially when it came to killing Lily, because any other time I would have killed Lily instantly. It would have been the quickest choice ever, because I am such an advocate of kill the villain if you get the chance, because they're going to come back and they are going to hurt you if you don't, right? They're going to come back, they're going to hurt you, they're going to come back with more people if you don't just put them down right then and there. So the fact that this guy the entire season got in my head and made me think that it would be bad karma if not only I killed people but let AJ kill people, it obviously resulted in me not telling AJ to shoot Lily. And the other reason why I didn't think that would be a big consequence is because it was like the last episode. So I was like, okay, like, really, what is going to happen? Lily, like, what is she going to be able to do? There's only one more episode left. So I felt like we're kind of at the end of all the consequences here. How much worse could it get? But normally I would have shot her just immediately. So the fact that he was able to convince me not to shoot people based on bad karma, if nothing else, really effective character for me. So he's an A. Duck's dumpster, right? Let's put him right next to his dad. Duck's dumpster tier. He's just annoying as shit. He sucks. He gets bit, and that's sad, but he's just a little brat, so whatever. Duck is just terrible. This chick is so minor, but I'll put her in C. This woman, she is one of the guards with Lily, and she's about to cut off Violet's finger unless you attack her with AJ. So I think that's kind of cool. So I'll just put her in C. I think Abel as well. I think Abel is a B. Yeah, Abel was interesting because he was a guy who shows up, or not at the train. Where are they? At the train station. And we're looting that place that isn't ours, right? It's not our loot of food, but we go there with Violet and with AJ to get food from there because we know that place has food. And this guy shows up and he's got a gun, and we can tell right away that he's bad, obviously. But I thought that situation was really interesting because he just shows up and he asks for food, and then he's not really intentionally threatening us or seeming like he's going to hurt us at all, but the implication is there that he'll hurt us if we don't give him some of the food. And I think a lot of people would have chosen to attack him right there because, one, he's the bad guy or whatever, but I didn't attack him because that's not our food, you know? Like, I understood the situation as being, okay, we're at this cache of food that's not ours. So if this guy is coming over here and he's hungry and he's going to harm us if we don't give up some of the food, there's no reason to not give him some of the food, and then he's just going to be on his way, which is what happens, right? And then obviously he comes back later and he's with Lily, and obviously everything happens the way it does, and he's a bad guy. But I think we handled that situation really interestingly, because he didn't have to he didn't harm us, he didn't do anything. It was a very actually authentic experience that I think you would have in the apocalypse, where a bunch of people would come across the same thing and the same supply of food, and there's hesitation there's apprehension, because you don't know if the one person's gonna hurt you or not, but he just takes his food and he's on his way, right? Which I thought was really cool. And then later on, you capture him when they come and they attack Erickson school, and then you do the whole interrogation thing to him, and you get to choose whether or not you want to burn him or splash the water on him and do all that stuff. We ended up killing him because he didn't want to turn, because he was spitting up blood or something from the fall, I guess, from the balcony. But he's used as that character who really authentically represents how people would normally be in the apocalypse, and I thought it was really cool. So I liked his character a lot. Actually, you know what? I'll make him an A. I think he's an A because of that reasoning. Yeah, he has a pretty good effect on the game as well, because normally, again, I would just kill the person, or I would like to think that I would, but then you can understand that situation as just being, okay, everybody's just trying to survive, everyone just wants food, he gets his food and then he leaves. So it's really effective that way. Javier is god tier. Javi is god tier. I love Javi. Javi is this character who you can play him in very dynamic ways, which I think is interesting, because Clementine and Lee are very much just, we're the really good character, we're the moral compass of the game, you know? That's basically who Lee and Clementine are, is just, if you need a moral compass to follow, just follow them. But Javier is interesting because you can play him as the dutiful brother, you can play him as the flirtatious, you know, con man sort of thing. You can be a lying backstabber, or you can be the person who wants everyone to survive, indiscriminate of who they are, you know. And it's cool because you get the brother dynamic, you get the dynamic of him being a family man, even though it's like his family because of David, but not his actual blood, you know? So I like that he assumes that role of the family man, and he does a really good job. I think he does an amazing job, like, raising Mariana and Gabe. Like, the decisions he makes with Gabe are so much fun, because he treats it like he's this uncle who's trying to be a really good dad without imposing himself as a dad. He's not like, Gabe, I'm your father now because I've been taking care of you, so you have to listen to me. He actually really understands Gabe's decisions and lets him make decisions for himself, like a third party observer, but with a lot of care and empathy toward the kid, you know. But then I love that you also get to, you know, if you want to romance Kate, you can do that, because I guess it wouldn't matter with the brother because he just hates you anyway. And then you can also play it like you hate David or you love David. So there's a lot of fun ways that you can play as Javier, and I think all of them are really respectable and fun. I was surprised at how much I liked his story, actually, because I thought that it would be like, okay, there's this random guy, I'd much rather just play as Clementine, but his character was awesome the entire way through. I thought Gabe was just going to be dumpster tier from the very start, because he's just a moody, angsty teen. I think I put Gabe in B. I think Gabe makes some interesting choices the whole time, and I like the dynamic of him. I think my favorite thing about Gabe in season 3 is the fact that based on how you treat him and what things you teach him, he's going to pick between you or David. But the upsetting thing is that I think it's scripted that at the very end he does go with David either way, and then the choice is go after Gabe and David or go save Richmond with Kate. So unfortunately he does end up with David either way, which is weird, but you can make him question that decision more and more throughout the game. So I think that's fun. And then his choices are sometimes good, and it's like his coming of age story, trying to figure out how like he can be more responsible and everything. I think it's fun. I guess I would say Kate's B. Like, she's obviously trying to be the romantic pull, you know, and then if you want that in the game, you can have that. You can have, okay, let's romance Kate if you want to. But I think she does a good job of tugging you away from the only other option being go help David, right? She gives you an out where it's like, if you really didn't agree with David and didn't like David, you don't have to choose to save him. You can choose to just try to leave and abandon David and just stay with Kate and Gabe. I'll say she's a B, because I don't think she's insignificant. I don't know. David might be a C for me. Like, I was thinking the whole time in season 3 that David was misunderstood good guy, and that he was just strict because he was big army man, you know? But it's so frustrating that the entire game, and even in the flashbacks, he's just beating the piss out of Javi. Like, the way that he gets angry at Javi is just, you know, calling him out for being a gambler or beating him up and pushing him around. And then throughout the game, it seems like he's a good guy out of nowhere because he's making rational choices in Richmond, and he ends up not being the source of anything bad going on in the New Frontier. He's just a guy who lives there, and he doesn't know about any of the shady stuff going on there. So you're like, oh wait, is David actually a good guy? You're like, I thought he was going to be the main antagonist for sure. I thought they were setting it up so like the lead conflict was going to be Javi and David from the very start, but it's only that at the very end in the final episode where he finds out that Kate likes you, even if you don't even have feelings for her, and then he just fights you. And I don't think it matters whether you fight him back or not. He just pushes you around again, and then he leaves with Gabe, and then, you know, the situation's no better at the end. He's just still an asshole at the end. It's weird mood swings where it's like he's not a good brother to Javi, and he's a terrible father and husband to Kate and his family. He's never around his kids. He has no idea who they are. He decided to go to the army instead of stay with his family just because he decided to on a whim, I guess. And then at the end, he's just still an asshole, and he decides to fight you. Like, you made a promise to your dad as Javi to try to mend things with your brother, but then he's just an asshole the whole time and still wants to fight you. David doesn't overcome some sort of arc and change, even though it looks like he's going to, and then he just ends up in the same spot at the end of the game. So it's really unfortunate. I think he's a C. Like, I don't think that it pisses me off so much that he's a D. I still think he serves some purpose with the mood swings, but I don't know if I can say that he's a B. Like, I think the regression of his character, I don't think he deserves to be a B. I think he's a C. Because he doesn't really change. It looks like he's going to, but then he doesn't. Otherwise, he would be a B. Kat just sucked, right? She sucked. She's just there, right? She's just there to be someone else that Kenny gets to lose his mind about for no reason. So, she sucks. Marinara, probably a B as well. She was just sweet, right? She was just sweet, and she's the leverage. She's the jump scare, startled death that spurs everything in motion. And then obviously Kate getting shot as well is why they need to go to Richmond. Is this the guy that we let turn instead of killing him in that building. I think he is, but because I can't remember, I'm just going to say he's D. Ava, I thought was a cool character. I don't know if Ava would be an A, though. No, I think she's B. Ava finds Clem, and then sort of is the initiation into the New Frontier, and showing that the New Frontier isn't just all assholes, right? Like, she's part of the New Frontier, but she's really nice and sweet. And then we get her killed. And she's part of that decision where it's like you pick someone to save, but the person you pick to save gets killed, which I thought was super cool. And I called it, but I couldn't trust my gut on that. I didn't want to pick Trip because I was afraid that I was wrong and then Trip would be saved and Ava would be killed. So I would have rather have taken the risk of choosing the person I actually wanted to save. But I was hoping that I would just save Ava instead, but it turned out that I was right in my gut and I should have just picked Trip so that Ava would be alive, but I was so afraid. Of course, this is all based on obviously my opinion, right? This is my biased opinion based on the playthrough that I had, right? Trip was a C because Trip is such a baby. Trip is such a baby the entire start of the season, and then when it actually comes time for him to when it actually comes time where he should hate you because you just put him up to get murdered, he decides to risk his life for you. Makes no sense. But I hate how he is with Eleanor, where he's like, oh, should I tell her I like her? Oh, like, you're not 5 years old. Make your own decision. Holy hell. It was so frustrating. So he's a C. I don't know. He risks his life for us, so I'm not going to put him in D. Like, I don't think he's the worst, but he's so annoying. So he's got to be C for me. He's not any higher for sure. This guy, also C. This is the guy, I think his name is Max. He shows up and he looks like he's awful. Like, he looks like he's going to be like a ringleader asshole, but he ends up being the only bandit from the New Frontier who actually has empathy, and he ends up helping you expose Joan later on, who is also a terrible character. This person sucks. This character also, at the end of the season, is just MIA. She's just gone. Apparently, David and Gabe went after her, but then you don't hear or see from her again. It's just, and then it tells you that she's MIA. It doesn't say killed by David. It just says MIA. And then because the next season is just all about Clementine and has nothing to do with Richmond, you never know what happens to her. So she's D. Like, I don't think she's absolute dumpster, right? She didn't piss me off, but she's down below. She's awful, forgettable. I think this guy's also D. This guy is just so unimportant. He's just the doctor who gets high the whole time and then wants you to kill him. It's just like, okay, it's stupid. This guy's name was Clint, I think, but he's the exact same, where it's just, he's apparently complacent with all the stuff that Joan is doing or doesn't know what she's doing. But that's no excuse. It's just, like, how did you let any of this slide? And then when they actually kill Ava, all the people, all the civilians that are in Richmond, they're like, what? She actually killed her? It's like, do you not know what's going on in your own city? Like, what's going on? Am I stupid? What's happening? So Clint's one of those people. And then David just shot him. And he ruined our plan. So, whatever. Oh, here's Sean. Here's Sean Green from the first season. He's a C. Right? Sean seemed like he was a good guy, and we tried to save him instead of Duck, of course, right? But Sean ends up getting killed anyway. So, whatever. but I still think he's a C. He's not terrible. This is the guy that Clementine shoots, and he's just obviously forgettable as well. Sean put up a shite fence. He did. He really did. This guy is just so forgettable. This guy is just the guy that Clementine shoots. Like he's D. He's a D. Eleanor's a C. Eleanor's a C. She's another character in season 3 where a lot of characters in season 3 were really good characters halfway through and then just fell apart, or the opposite happened. And her character was cool at the start where she shows up and she seems like she's this really nice girl who's a doctor who wants to help you find your family, and she's going to sneak you out of the cage at night and you guys are going to go together, but you decide you don't want to get her hurt or in trouble from Prescott, so you choose to wait until the morning and go with Trip. And that makes sense to me. But then at the end, she decides, like, because of our playthrough, of course, because I don't think that we agreed with Trip or something, she decides to tell Joan what we were up to at the rally at the end, and then blows up her whole plan. So she kind of falls apart at the end, but I thought she was okay at the start, so not terrible, not good. She was just whatever. Brody, see, as we get into season 4 characters here, it'll be a lot more interesting because I loved season 4's characters. Let's do Conrad first, though. I thought Conrad was cool. I thought Conrad at least offered up some interesting choices. Like, Conrad was cool because you have to shoot. He's really the only thing stopping you from completely just shooting from the gate when the New Frontier bandits come at the start and they have Francine. If the only reason that you didn't want to shoot was because of Francine, then that was effective on his part. But I decided to shoot because Clementine and Trip both suggested that we just shoot. So I was like, okay, the majority of people want us to just start attacking. Let's just do it. And then obviously that gets Francine killed, and then we barrel down this guy into a path of retribution, and he gets pissed. And then because of that, he ends up when they find out that Clementine is part of the New Frontier, technically, makes up the plan of, let's have her go in and infiltrate for us. But we don't want to do that, obviously, because we don't want to put Clementine in that position. So, because at that point we didn't know who the New Frontier was. We had no idea if they were like really evil or not, and it turns out that only like a very small percentage of the New Frontier was actually evil, I guess. But either way, we didn't want to put Clementine in jeopardy. And then he also holds a gun to Gabe, so it was like, okay, yeah, we got to kill this guy, right? But I thought he at least gave us some interesting choices that we had to make. So I'll say Conrad's a B. Brody is interesting because she wants us to help her mend her relationship with Violet, who, like, they're friends, but I think Violet held her responsible for something. I can't even remember what it was, but they had a tension and we had to resolve that. Something about her not apologizing to Violet. And then either way, I think no matter how you treat Abel when you see him at the train station, she freaks out about everything going on, and then it results in her getting killed by Marlon in that cellar. So I think she's a C. Like, she doesn't do anything super impactful choice-wise. I do like her character. I think her character's good and emotional and dramatic, and, you know, her ties within the group are really strong, but I don't think that she does anything really to challenge the player. So I don't think that she's anything more than a C. Mitch I liked because he's also a character who at the start, he just hates you because Marlon's dead, so he doesn't trust you at all, and he's treating you poorly, but you can tell that he's softening up as the game keeps going and you're spending time with him in the greenhouse. So I liked that section because you could see him slowly put his walls back down and talk to you enthusiastically about the bomb and all of that. And then it's sad because he gets killed by Lily when that group comes and attacks us again, or for the first time. And then Willie's sad because I think they were brothers, or at least Mitch took care of Willie. I don't remember the relationship exactly, but and then we get to name the bomb that Willie makes Mitch's masterpiece. So I feel like Mitch has a lot to do with a lot of the emotional ties within that group as well, and he was fun to interact with, so I'm gonna say he's a B. Marlon was a super interesting character as well. I thought he was just gonna be straight up good, but then just conflicted about being a leader but handling it, and it turns out that he was handling it by going and offering up people from their kids group to Lily and Abel and those raiders, and not telling anyone and just saying that they died, I guess. So it was like super evil, super insidious, backstabbing his own group, but doing it at the same time for the benefit of the group, right? It's awful, and he's basically just trafficking these kids without them knowing. And then obviously he kills Brody, who is trying to tell Clem what's going on, so he doesn't want Clem to know. And then he tries to kill Clem by leaving her down there in the cellar with Brody, who turns into a walker. But I think Marlon's character is super interesting. Like, I love that role where he's doing awful things, but he really thinks he's doing it for the right reasons. It's not like a I know I'm being awful, sort of like Lily is, you know? Because with Lily and Abel, they also think what they're doing is logical, where you need warriors, you need soldiers to fight for you, and so they're gonna get that however they need to. But Marlon is actually really conflicted about it, and you can tell that he's scared. He doesn't know what will happen to the group if he doesn't give people up. I think that's pretty cool. That reminds me of the dynamic of A Bug's Life, you know? How the ants think they need to give all of their food up to the grasshoppers, but then they realize that there's way more of them, and they can just fight the grasshoppers, and they don't have to listen to them, and they don't have to give up their food. That's exactly how I perceive this dynamic, where it's like he's just doing what he thinks is the best situation for his group to survive, not knowing that he could easily just use all of them and fight back. It was a good ass movie. It's a legendary reference to A Bug's Life. But it's true. It's like you think that you're defenseless until you look at the bigger picture, and then you realize that like the enemy isn't stronger than you. They're just more intimidating. And if Marlon had been able to realize that, then they all could have banded together earlier and then fought back earlier, and then they wouldn't have had to sacrifice any of their people. So, but I think he's a really good character. I think he's super interesting as a leader. Oh, Lewis. Where am I putting Lewis? I feel like Lewis is a good character, but unfortunately, I think that because the game really strikes a divide between Lewis and Violet, if you pick Violet, ultimately Lewis isn't going to become like a great character, and then Violet does become a great character. But if you picked Lewis, I bet Violet becomes like an inferior character. So, oh, you're right. Yeah, this is Francine. Yeah. Okay, well then she's D. Yeah, she's forgettable. Yeah, I think you're right. But she was just used as a prop, right? She's just there to instigate the firefight. Yeah, I think I'll say Lewis is a B. Right? I'm trying to look at it from the perspective of whether he was going to be in Like, what would have happened to him if we didn't treat him the way that we did? But I still think that he is a B regardless, even in our playthrough, because of course I have to look at it from the perspective of our playthrough. We chose not to romance him and chose to romance Violet instead. And as a result, he gets kidnapped because we let him get kidnapped instead of her. Like, not let him be kidnapped, but we chose to save Violet, which means he was kidnapped. He gets his tongue cut out, and then he is just a sad, despondent character who's just sitting there, and he can't talk, obviously. So I don't think he's amazing. He's obviously the silly goofball comedic relief, but yeah, like he's just like the comedic relief in the group. But in terms of who you're romancing, it doesn't make sense to romance him unless you like him for just being super silly and goofy. But I think Violet's an A. I think Violet is a cool character. I think all of her like dramatic angsty stuff is kind of like whatever, but I think she's a good pair to Clementine and has a lot to do with the emotional side of the season. So I really like Violet. She also just seems like the most compatible with Clementine, so I felt like that made sense. Lily also, I think, is an A. I think Lily's character is super cool, and not just from her reappearance in season 4, which I love, but the fact that in season 1, Kenny kills her dad, and then she becomes violent and she lashes out, and because of Kenny, she turns into this, child trafficker, murderer person that you see in season 4, and even in season 1, she kills Carly because she's so obsessed about finding out what happened to the supplies and everything. That's just what consumes her after her father dies, and she just becomes like this crazy violent person. And then we even chose to keep her on the RV, but then she just steals the RV and leaves, which is scripted. So I love that she comes back after only appearing in the first season, and then she's this big villain in season 4. I loved that. I thought that was awesome. Because then it's cool, because then you have like the nostalgia of knowing who Lily was, and then you have to deal with who she is now, and she's just awful and torturing these kids and using them as soldiers. So it was super cool to see her again, and I should have shot her, but Minerva was also super cool. I think Minerva's also an A. Minerva was this girl who was dating Violet, and then she's one of the sisters of Tennessee who gets taken, and she killed her sister because her sister was trying to leave, and at that point Minerva is already brainwashed enough that she thinks that her sister shouldn't be leaving and kills her because that's their home or whatever with Lily and the other raiders. And then when you find her, she seems like she's gonna help, like maybe you can sway her, but then she ends up just getting you guys locked up, and then Lily's there, and then you have to fight her. And at the end, it's so sick because she shows up at the bridge and she's all gnarly and bitten and cut up because she was attacked by walkers. And so she's in the process of dying, but she has her axe and she's walking up, and she's walking inside this giant swarm of walkers, and you as Clementine have to duck behind this flatbed and fire arrows, and she's ducking and hiding behind other walkers because they all smell her and detect her as being a walker herself, even though she's not fully transformed yet. And then you have to do this cool sequence where you're trying to shoot her in this swarm of walkers. It's so sick. But yeah, she comes back for Tennessee, and then that scene is tense. But I loved Minnie's character. She's awesome. Tennessee is an A. He is just a sweet boy. He's just a sweet little boy. He means no harm. He's so wholesome. Tennessee might be the most wholesome character in this whole thing, and not Clementine, because Clementine obviously has to do some like mature violent stuff to survive or whatever, but Tennessee is just such a sweetheart. And then eventually at the end he gets swung by Minnie and wants to go to her and be with her as a walker or whatever. And then AJ has to make the hard choice of shooting Tennessee to save Violet, who Violet's trying to pull Tennessee back, but it's not working. And then decides to AJ decides to shoot Tennessee so that Violet can just let go and get safe. But that's super sad. And then you see Tennessee later on as a walker, and AJ has to put him down. But Tennessee is just so sweet the whole time because he thinks that there's life afterwards, as like even if you are a walker and you can be with other people. And it's just so sweet because it's so sad because he thinks that his sisters are dead, and one of them does end up being dead, but like he has this burial for her with all their stuff in the burial and not actually them. And he's just so accepting and forgiving. He's so forgiving and sweet. So Tennessee would be an S for me, but he's mostly just there as the really sweet, wholesome kid. He doesn't actually do anything servicing the story really, but I love his connections to Minnie and the other characters. So he's as close to a god tier as possible, but I can't justify him being god tier. Asim, see, Asim's just there, you know, same as Omar. Omar and Asim are just there. Ruby, I think Ruby's a B. Like Ruby has enough emotional ties to things in the characters as well, and her seeing the nurse in the greenhouse is sweet, and you find out that she was like the most violent of all the kids or something from her dossier or whatever, when they have that like mini party before they go out and try to stop the raiders and get Lewis, Omar, and Asim back. So I thought that was sweet. I think she's just a little bit more pivotal than a C, so I'm gonna stick her in B. And then Willie, I don't know, Willie is like also a weird one where I feel like he has emotional ties to everybody. Yeah, you know what, I'll say Willie's a B as well. Willie's just like this scrappy little kid who becomes sad when he sees Mitch dies, at least in my playthrough. And then, like, because I don't know if Mitch dies either way or if that was just my playthrough, but I like Willie's reaction to that, and I like Willie wanting to create the bombs and use the traps, and you protect him against, well, I protected him against Asim, who looked like he was bullying him. And then he's like this scrappy kid at the end who's trying to take the raft and get away. I don't actually remember what happens to him. I don't know if he lives the whole way. I don't remember if we see him at the end at the dinner, but yeah, he's at least more memorable than like Asim or Omar. And I think that's it. Everyone else down here is DLC or so unmemorable that I just don't know who the hell they are. Like, I'm pretty sure this guy was just another New Frontier henchman guy. Whether or not I liked them based on bias from my playthrough, and whether or not I think they had a good arc, and whether or not they added something to the game where it was a new obstacle you had to face, or it was a difficult decision that you had to make with them, is how I went about it. Yeah, like based on my playthrough, of course, right? Because I can't just assume, oh, maybe this character is better if I had done this. It's all based on my experience with the characters on this. I think a lot of people would put Kenny at the very top. I want to hear people who really defend Kenny and what their explanation is for liking Kenny as much as they did. Like, I want to hear their reaction to every single Kenny choice and see what they thought of every single thing that he did, because yeah, my experience is much different. I think the Kenny choice is probably the most controversial that I would have. I think this is my definitive Telltale's The Walking Dead character tier list. What do you guys think?